Lord through Jesus Christ. Good morning, beloved brothers and sisters. Today we have quite a story, quite an awful story. These two demonically possessed men that Jesus meets as he crosses the Sea of Galilee. And this story is terrifying because you see that these men are so enslaved to the devil that they live in death, they live in tombs. And they are so wicked, and so fierce, and so vicious that no one can even pass by that side of the lake. It's almost like traffic has been shut down around the lake. And it seems that Satan is very strong, and indeed he is, to a certain degree. And these men are in complete bondage to him, complete. And yet, that's not really the story. Because when Christ arrives, it's Satan who's in great trouble. He's in great bondage. He is in great agony. In fact, it's not the two men that are as helpless as it is the demons who are possessing him. Because as soon as Christ arrives, it all ends. And they immediately come to him. They come running to him. Because when the master comes, it's useless to hide. So you come begging for mercy if you think you can get some. And they come and they say, cast us into these swine, please. At least do this. Don't throw us into the abyss yet. If we read the other Gospels. And the Lord immediately says, go. Leave. And they immediately depart. And it shows how truly helpless the devil is, how truly bound he is. In fact, it's a mistake to think there's a war between Satan and God. There's a war between the Lord's servants, those who fight on his behalf, and the devil. But there's no war between God and the devil. As soon as the Lord speaks, all the shenanigans come to an end. They all end in this moment. In fact, there are so many stories I can bring to you of temptation ending. One time, St. Paisios, this wonderful saint from Mount Athos, one time when he was a young monk, went back to his town to restore a monastery. And there was a lot of problems in this town, and he was trying to put them right. There was Protestants, there were heretics, there was all kinds of issues. And there was also this immoral woman who was living a bad life, and she would come and speak to St. Paisios, kind of confess that she was repenting, and St. Paisios would accept it. And then later some people came to him and they said, no, Father, she's not doing that. She's still living badly, really badly. And so the next time she came, St. Paisios was kind of harsh for him, very harsh. And she left in tears from the monastery that he was restoring. And immediately he was assailed by the worst temptations he'd ever had, the worst lustful temptations ever. These temptations were so bad that he took his prayer up, he struggled, he did prostrations, nothing happened. He read Psalms, nothing happened. So finally, being a carpenter, he took, I don't know if it was a file or a wedge, and he took a hammer and he was chinking off chunks of skin right off his leg. And as he would do this, blood would just flow, until finally his shoes were full of blood, because he had done this to at least one leg, maybe two. And so nothing was helping, nothing was abating, nothing was changing. And so St. Paisios said, I'm going to go be eaten by bears. Because he knew there were bears in the surrounding forest. He said, it's better to die from bears than it is to sin. So he went to find bears. And there was none to be found. And as he was searching for something to do, something to relieve him of his passions, he suddenly realized to himself, what if the woman had temptations like these? What if her passions were like this? He said, Lord, I judge the woman, forgive me. And as soon as he said this, the temptation was gone, immediately. St. Paisios is a great man, and so when great men make mistakes, even small ones, they suffer great calamities. Moses wasn't allowed to go in the promised land, so forth and so on. And so as soon as he judged this woman, he gave rights to Satan. Satan said, okay, you've made this mistake, you belong to me, I can tempt you now. But the moment he repented, God ended it. St. Joseph the Hesychist is a great saint of Mount Athos too. And when he was a young monk, he was a very violent monk, a very intense struggler. And so one day he had this vision in his sleep in which this really tall, imposing monk came to him and he said, would you like to fight at the very front lines of the war? And Joseph, being this incredibly aggressive man, said, yeah, I will. And so the monk said, follow me. And he led him through this dream and through a column of monks, a big long column, all the way to the very front of the column, in which there was a horrendous war going on, and Joseph plunged into it. And then he woke up from his dream and he said, what does this mean? And for the next 8 years, he had the most horrendous temptations he had ever seen, temptations beyond anything. And St. Joseph said that throughout the day, he would have the most lurid, awful thoughts, always, without end. And he would beat himself with a cane to drive away these awful thoughts. He would fast almost to starvation, and he would never sleep at all. In fact, every night, demons would come and beat him as he tried to sleep. They would attack him every single night. For 8 years, this continued. And sometimes God would let it abate a little because he was a human. and then it would come back again. And for 8 years this raged, and Joseph was so violent, he said, either I will bury you, or you will bury me. That's what he said to Satan. He continued fighting this 8 years. Finally, at the end of the 8 years, Joseph was completely dead. His body was beginning to die. He was so weak from all the fasting. And he said, God, I hate to say this, but Satan's won. I'm about to die. I've been not sleeping for years. I've been not eating. I've been sleeping hardly at all. And I'm so weak that I can barely maintain myself. And my passions are still as strong as they were the first day. I've been defeated. And at that moment, he felt someone almost trying to assail him carnally. And he saw this demon, and he attacked it, and that creature left him. And from that point onward, he never was tempted in this way again for his whole life. So God had removed it. He had struggled, but God was the one who removed it. God removed it. The moment God said it's over, it was over. It was done. That's how much power the Lord has. Mother of God, beloved, is above Satan. As high as heaven is above hell, so much higher is she above Satan. Right? So when you appeal to her, she is greater than he. And her name alone causes him to tremble. The angels are above the demons. Even though the demons were once angels, they don't have the power the angels have. In fact, there's a great story of Moses, the Ethiopian, who when he was beginning his monastic struggle, he had many temptations. There's always a pattern. At the beginning, there's always really bad temptations. And so Moses was struggling in his cell. And again, the spirit of fornication came upon him. And this was so bad that he left his cell. He said, I cannot stay in this place. I cannot pray here. I cannot stay here. And he went to the abbot and he said, Abbot, my problems are so terrible, I will not remain in this place. And the abbot said, get back in your cell and continue. And he said, I can't. This is terrible. I can't do this. And the abbot said, do it. Get back in there and continue to pray. And Moses said, you don't understand. These are bad temptations. I'm not going back there. And Moses was a big man. He was a tough guy. In fact, these men came to rob the monastery, and he beat all of them up and carried all of them on his back and dropped them at the foot of the abbot. So he wasn't a weak man. But these temptations were too much for him. And so the abbot said, Moses, look at the western sky. Please look to the west. And Moses did. And he saw the entire darkened sky full of demons flying and breathing fire and doing all these hideous things. And he was like, Abbot, this doesn't cheer me up at all. This makes me feel worse. And the abbot says, that's fine, look to the east now. And so he turned and looked at the eastern sky. It was filled with rank upon rank upon rank upon rank upon rank of a massive bristling army. And he said, oh. And the abbot says, do you feel better now? And he says, yes. He says, Moses, go back to your cell, because you know what army fights for you. You know what kind of army will help you. It's much stronger than the other one. Go, get back to work. Continue to struggle. He said, okay, I will. And he became a saint. In Greece, there was recently this wonderful woman. She was a lay woman most of her life, but she became a nun at the end of her life. Her name was Galactia. And she became an eldress. She became a very holy woman. She was clairvoyant. She had a lot of grace. She lived in Crete. And actually, many famous bishops in Greece would go talk to her. Even from Cyprus, they would go talk to her. Including Metropolitan Herodotus Logos, the great author. He would go and see this woman. He would go talk to her. And so they were talking about all kinds of things. What visions she had had, what experiences of grace she had had, what kind of prayers she had. But they also said, what is your experience of demons? And she said, I've had many of those. She said, but I pray to the Archangel, Michael, all the time. And he always helps me. In fact, I know him very well. I prayed to him for much of my life, and he will come and see me. And so the bishop is interested in this. He says, so what does Michael look like? What is he like? And she said, he is awesome. He is very tall, and he has a lot of power. And she said, when he comes into the room, everyone leaves. And all the demons leave. None of them fight him. None of them will even stand before his face because he has so much power. They just leave as soon as he comes in. And whenever I have trouble, I ask him to come, and he comes immediately. And so, beloved, even the demons don't have power against the angels at all. They don't. They really don't. What about the saints? Same. The saints are the same. They have so much power. In fact, there's one more story I'll tell you about St. Andrew, the fool for Christ in Constantinople. He was a great saint who had many adventures, you can imagine, many experiences. He's the saint that's featured in the Feast of the Protection, in which he's in the Church of Latrinae, and he enlightens his disciple Epiphanius, and they see the Mother of God extending her protection over the city. And so one day Andrew, as was his wont, would go to churches at night, and he would pray in the depths of the night when no one was around. It was very calm and peaceful. And so one night Andrew was praying in the church, and all of a sudden this hideous noise happened. And all these demons entered the church, and they said, Andrew, we're coming for you. We're going to beat you badly this time. And Andrew was, of course, not happy about this. And he immediately prayed. He said, God save me. He said, Mother of God save me. And then he said, also, John the theologian save me. And immediately there was a sound like thunder. And they said the roof of the church opened. And John the theologian came from heaven with all these angels. And John told the angels, he said, seize the demons, grab them, don't let any of them get away. And then John did something very interesting. He went up to Andrew and he said, Andrew, give me your chains, my brother. And Andrew wore chains, just like St. Herman would do. He would wear these chains under his whatever filthy clothes Andrew had. He wore these chains. And so St. John said, Andrew, take off your chains and give them to me. And Andrew took off his chains and gave them to the apostle. And the apostle said, bring the demons to me. He began to beat each one of them very harshly. In fact, they screamed for mercy, and John actually was very unmerciful. In fact, then even when John first came, the demons said, oh no, it is John, and he is very strict, and he is very unmerciful. And he was very unmerciful. And finally, when he was done thrashing them, he let them go. And he turned to Andrew and he said, Andrew, do you not see how quickly I came to you? Do you not see how quickly I was with you? As soon as you said my name, I was with you. As soon as you called upon me, I came to you. And I dispersed your enemies. So you see, beloved, the devil is stronger than we are, much stronger, because we're sinners. That's why. Because we sin. When we sin, we give him power over us. And the more proud we are, the more vain we are, the more we give him to sin, the more power he has to control us, to have rights over us, to tempt us, to harm us. But at the same time, the devil is a lot of shock and awe, honestly. When he comes loudly, brashly. But when the Lord comes, he leaves. When the angels come, he leaves. When the Mother of God's name is mentioned, he leaves. When the saints come, he leaves. Because he cannot fight with them. He won't fight with them. Beloved, it's like you're walking down a forest road, and all of a sudden you find this net barring your way. You push against the net, and it seems like it's strong. In fact, when you look at it, it seems impossible. It looks like a net of woven steel fibers. You say, oh my goodness, what will cut through this? An axe won't cut through this. A chainsaw would grind, would bind on this. We can't cut through it. And then a smarter member of your party crosses himself and cuts it with his fingers as if it was a spider's web. This is what it's like. This is the real world. Temptations can become fears. They can become incredibly hard. Just like Joseph the Hesychist's temptations and St. Paisius' temptations. But the Lord is watching, and he is holding the crowns for the contest. He's watching. We have this icon of St. Anthony on the backside of the pillar of him being attacked by waves of demons when he was in this tomb. And the demons were beating Anthony. Anthony was fighting with them. And Anthony said, God, save me. God, save me. And the battle ended. And Anthony said, God, why didn't you intervene immediately? The Lord said, Anthony was watching the contest. I wanted to crown him. If I intervened too quickly, you wouldn't have received the crown. But I'm watching. And I'm the one holding all the power. I always have been. And so that's the thing, beloved. When you have temptation, when the devil attacks you with great ferocity, do not immediately cower, do not immediately yield. But wait for the wave to break and wait for it to recede. It's a temptation, it will pass. Not only will it pass, but a crown awaits those who will endure it, and will endure with great strength. And you can endure it. There is no temptation you receive that is greater than you. And not only that, the power of Christ is greater than his. Crowns await you if you will buckle down. Beloved, trust in God. Trust in him. Remember the power Christ has. Remember this whole scene. Remember that even though these men are completely enslaved, as soon as Christ comes, everything ends. The shenanigans end. It's all over. And they're begging to go into swine. They're begging to go into pigs rather than to escape Christ. They want to leave Christ. They don't want to be in his presence. His presence is so terrible to them that they would rather go into animals and go into the lake than to be in Christ's presence. Remember this. Especially when you're the most tested, remember this. And God will help you. Amen.